Good evening. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to another great weekend of learning, another great weekend at the Electoral College Nigeria. How we doing? Want to believe we've been well, and the learnings have been insightful, impactful. The experience has also been great. I want to thank the college for the opportunity given to me to handle and moderate the session this evening once again. So I would like to say welcome to everyone, cohort XI, party chairman, our chairpersons. Please ensure your members are on the call. Let's also remember our class rules. Once we come in, we place our names in the chat box the way we want them to appear on our certificates at the end of the semester. So it's 5:01 right now. We will give 5 minutes for everyone to gather their thoughts and basically put themselves together so that they can join the class, and then we will start at 5:05. Today we are taking on governance and corruption. It's an interesting one, and I want to believe that we have our hearts ready, our minds open, and hopefully we have tons and tons of questions for our facilitator this evening. So thank you once again. The way the session would run, I would introduce our facilitator and then he would go ahead with the class. I want to believe that we have received our materials and gone through them before this class. So after which, if we have questions, we'll take the questions. You can put the questions in the chat box as they pop up in your heart. We will scroll through them and ensure that we take everything, each and every one. The session should last for a maximum of 2 hours, and we're not going beyond that, for a minimum of an hour, 30 minutes. So, but at the end of the session, we'd also take questions, so you can indicate by a show of hands, and that would be the format. Thank you, and see you in about 3 minutes where we will start the session. Please get your classmates in so that we have a robust discussion and so that our facilitator doesn't come in and meet a very small number of people on the call. So party chairpersons, please enable you do the work, call out to everyone. They can log in whilst on their way home listening. Thank you very much. Okay. Welcome back, everyone. It's 5:05 and we will start. I can see our facilitator is in class. Welcome, everyone, once again. Today, we have our facilitator who will be taking us on governance and corruption. He's someone who specializes in the area of data science, criminal justice system, financial crimes, and geoeconomics. At the national level, he has been a member of the National Risk Assessment Secretariat on Money Laundering and Terrorism Financing. And also, he was one of the 8 members that developed the National Anti-Corruption Strategy to be implemented by the Office of the Attorney General of the Federation from 2017 to 2021. He has been involved in policy making related to the legal and institutional framework of anti-money laundering and combating the finance of terrorism in Nigeria by serving on the Presidential Committee on Financial Action Task Force, PCFATF. He also worked on the technical committee that addressed FATF's strategic deficiencies, which got Nigeria delisted as a country of high risk by FATF in 2013. His core areas of expertise are policy formation around corporate governance, criminal justice, anti-money laundering, combating the financing of terrorism, anti-corruption, counter-fraud, and national security. He has obtained degrees and certificates from Ahmadu Bello University, Zaria.
Hello, I'm here. You can skip all that. I was in another class. Skip all that, please.
We should, okay. All
Skip
right,
all
so
that,
welcome.
Where am I?
But you shared your profile with us. We really like people to know.
Okay, sorry.
Sure.
Continue.
Okay, all right, that's fine. Okay, so we know that, okay, so with the permission of the Electoral College, the ED, DED, and all members of the board, I'd like to welcome Mr. Umar Yakubu, who has a very rich, robust profile, which he doesn't want us to finish reading, but we are grateful that he's here with us. So, Mr. Umar, you have the virtual lectern and you can kick off. Thank you very much. Hello.
Yeah, I'm here. Sorry, okay. I'm just off another class, like I told you, and I'm just.
Okay. Oh, okay. Okay. All right.
I'm not even done there.
Do you need a minute, sir?
I would love. Is it possible, since there are only 9 people online, if you can give me 5 minutes, would that be okay?
Okay, that's fine. We have about 34 people online. Okay, but yes,
we'll take at the moment.
Yes, 34 at the moment.
Okay, so let's start. Let's finish this. Hold on.
Okay. Okay, so yes, thank you everyone for joining. Mr. Umar Yakubu is here. And I want to say thank you to the chairpersons for facilitating, mobilizing, I meant to say, your members. And on this note, I would like to hand over the virtual lectern to Mr. Yakubu. You can start, sir. We have about an hour, 30 minutes for this session. We'll take questions after, depending on how you would like your session to go. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Are you allowing me to share my screen? Yeah, I can see that.
Okay, yes.
Can you see my screen now?
Yes, very well, sir. We can.
Okay.
But you need to enlarge it, or yes, great. It looks good.
Okay, thank you everyone, and I apologize for joining in late. I already told the Electoral College that I'll be a few minutes late. I apologize for that. My name is Umar Yakubu. For the purpose of this class, I'm the Executive Director, Center for Fiscal Transparency and Integrity Watch. And the 15th July, or maybe I did this presentation on 15th July, which happens to be my birthday. So maybe today is 9th of June, 2023. So today we're going to have a class on governance and corruption. And the contents are, next slide. Can you see the next slide?
Yes.
Okay, fine.
We can.
Okay, fine. Just give me a second. Okay, we'll have the introduction. Then what is governance? Then what are the dimensions of good governance? Then we'll look at what is corruption. I'll look at the dimensions of corruption. Then we'll look at the impact of corruption on governance. Then we'll look at what Nigeria has already done in terms of combating corruption. We'll make a few recommendations and we'll conclude. So I think we can finish this maybe within the next 30 minutes. Thank you. So, there is a consensus. The reason why you have the Electoral College, the center, everybody, if you take any random sample of Nigerians and ask them about corruption, I can bet you 60 to 70, if not 80% of everybody will tell you corruption is our problem. So our problems regarding corruption are well documented. We don't need to talk about how we don't have good roads, how we don't have good hospitals, how our politicians steal. All those things are well documented. You can write 10 volumes of all the bad things what Nigeria is currently facing right now. No light, things are expensive, so there's no need to go into those details. But the truth is, what we have realized is that it is a problem and we have to solve it. So, what is governance? What is good governance? So I would like there are several definitions of what good governance comprises, what governance comprises. The World Bank has its definition, the IMF has its definition. So many scholars have their own definition, but I would like to go with the UNDP definition, which is the United Nations Development Program, because they are like the global institution that fashions out things that have to do with governance structures and mechanisms where citizens and where everybody can bring in his own ideas for humanity. So the way the UNDP defines it is governance comprises of the mechanisms. That is the first thing. Mechanisms, processes, and institutions through which citizens and groups articulate their interests, exercise their legal rights, meet their obligations, and mediate their differences. So what it simply means is that governments, for Nigeria now, for example, must have mechanisms, and mechanisms now we're talking about our laws, our constitution, what the Electoral College is trying to, our Electoral Act, where you're trying to educate people on the people that are going to do it, which are part of the processes, how you do all these things, the institutions we're talking about, INEC, the police, the president, the governors, the local government chairman, that will all come together and agree with citizens and interest groups, different groups, whether you want to bring our associations and everything to articulate our interests, which is basically means is we all want light, we want water, we want to be able to pay our school fees, we want good roads, we want security, which is very important. We want to be secure, financially secure, health security, education security, and physical security. All these issues will agree that we want them. So, and see how we can meet those needs and wants without too much chaos, rancor, and crisis. So basically, that is within the Nigerian context that what governance should be all about. So how do you put in all these mechanisms, processes, and institutions together? I've picked several dimensions of good governance. There are several models, several. If you use Google, you find that there are so many. But what my own take is this model, if you want good governance, and of course, I'll use Nigeria as an example. The first thing you need, since we have agreed to have a democracy based on the American presidential system, we must have political accountability. Now, because everything we're going to do is going to be push is our politicians that are going to do it through the political structures. And what is the first pillar of political accountability? Like I said, these are my own views here. There are several models. The first pillar is credible elections. Now, I'm not partisan, so I will not tell you whether we have had credible elections or not, but I believe that our elections have been improving year on year. Every time we have elections, I think there has been some improvement, but the basis, the minimum a country should have is to have credible elections. Because without having credible elections, there is just no way you will have the legitimacy or the moral right to do what you are supposed to do for the people. If you don't have credible elections, the right people supposedly would not get there, because the assumption is that the citizens know what is good for them. That is the theory. Every citizen knows what his problems are. And he's educated enough, though I doubt, he's educated enough to know that this candidate A or B will serve my interests and protect my interests and provide my needs. Even though, unfortunately, though it should not be part of this class, we are not enlightened enough, which is what the Electoral College is doing. We are not enlightened enough in knowing how to select our own candidates for elections, because we have seen right from the primaries level at the local government, state and federal, most of the drivers for selection is usually money, followed by tribe, followed by religion and other primordial sentiments. Hardly do you see character, competence, past records, all those things being a criteria for selecting candidates at all levels. And let's not only look at the presidential level, even down at the subnational level is very terrible. So these are the pillars that are built around credible elections. When starting from the primaries, if you get your primaries wrong, the right candidates will never come up, because you have monetized it so much that you push the credible candidates out of maybe the main parties. For example, now APC and PDP, people now have to start jumping to other parties that do not have the structure, because you have monetized, you reduce the credibility of the primaries at that level. So what happens is people will now jump elsewhere. So you see the problem starts from that primary level up to you have monetized it right from the bottom all the way up, and we'll have problem. Then that gives us the kind of leaders we have today and we have had in the past. So any country that is serious has to really, really work on credible elections. That's why I always commend the work that the Electoral College is doing in trying to sensitize citizens about the importance in being part of governance, part of the political process, to ensure that the right leaders are coming out. And in due course, people will get to see the importance of these things. The second pillar under the political accountability is transparency in party financing. The simple example I will give you now, just look at our last elections. Across all parties and across all levels, national and subnational, just do a Google and interrogate the source of funding for electoral financing. My center did a project on it last year where we did research on how much was spent across all parties in primaries. The minimum that was going for presidential, sometimes joint, presidential and gubernatorial was more than, sometimes minimum, I think was $15,000 per delegate. So there's major source of electoral financing has been shown to be so monetized, and the source of those income is usually through public sector corruption, where the money is sourced from the public purse, and the politician will need those funds to finance his campaign. He used it, you see, even the last election, even in spite of the cashless, this thing, we saw new notes. There were a lot of new notes that were used. Where was the money coming from? Parties in structured countries, or where there's transparency in electoral financing, you can see the efforts that politicians make. They will have dinners, they'll have book launches, they will have road walks, all trying to raise funding. But if you check our dear country, you hardly see that. Money just comes out. But we do not interrogate where the sources of this money comes from. Well, from our own little experience, it has shown that it's mostly from public purse, from our ministries, departments, and agencies of government. This is mostly through contract and all inflation of contract. This is where the money comes. So once you do that, it goes circle and circle, you are not going to have good governance. So you can see, even if we stay on this political accountability, we can spend 1 hour discussing the effects of lack of political accountability on our democratic process. The third one is asset declaration. The class I just finished now, and they were asking me of a Code of Conduct Bureau, and I said a Code of Conduct Bureau for me is actually the weak link in fighting corruption in Nigeria. What they do, they are the only agency that I know that has been created by the Constitution of Nigeria. Now, to show you that they are babies, the Constitution, apart from creating them, it created a tribunal for them. So meaning all you need to do is to ensure all public servants and political leaders declare their assets before assumption of office. Once they declare, you have the powers to investigate. Once you investigate, you have a tribunal that will effectively speed up the process of the prosecution. Then when they step down, in case there's nothing, they will submit another one, and you still have the powers by the Constitution, such humongous powers, to do the right thing now and prosecute. But if you check their data, they have done near zero. I don't want to use zero but they have done near zero of what I've told you. All they do is to send the forms to public servants, they declare the assets, and that's where it ends. Nothing has been done. So you see, from this pillar of political accountability, everything I'm going to talk about next is going to crumble, because you're not going to have them, because we have not gotten the first step right. But let me just go on. So CCB is part of the problem, but it's actually part of the solution to curb and support this first pillar. The second pillar is public sector expenditure management. The last research that I'm aware of in Nigeria, but is mainly across every country, is that if you look at public sector corruption, yes, we have issues of nepotism, abuse of office, favoritism, taking people from your village, people from your tribe, and all that. But the major source of funds corruption in terms of taking money out is through procurement. And the last data was about 76%, if I'm correct. So I can't remember the other research. But so 76% is taken through procurement. So now when during procurement, is done in secrecy. Nobody knows what is budgeted for. And even when you budget it for, how are you sure it's being expended for the right reasons? How are you sure the projects are being completed? That's for building of roads, building of hospitals, and now those are the tangible things that you can see. Now, the service ministries are the ones, let's say, Ministry of Education, Ministry of Health. A lot of their work may not entail physical structure. Apart from building of classrooms or hospitals, there are a lot of things you pay money for. Let doctors go and do their work, let teachers go and do their work. How are you sure that what you are paying for, you are getting value? The country is getting value for them. So once there's no public sector expenditure management, they are going to have a problem. There's a framework they have at the World Bank, which I like. They call it the PIFA, Public Expenditure Framework and Accountability Mechanism, where it's performance-based, where it's an Excel sheet where you put everything you are spending, zero-based budgeting to the last kobo or to the last dollar. And everything is transparent. From the budget preparation is from bottom up. Citizens must be engaged when you're preparing your budget. But right now, because of our system, we expect our House of Representatives, our state assembly members, our senators to be involved because they are representing us. Everybody cannot go to Abuja. So they are part of it. We're all involved. They were supposed to monitor and execute, but instead of all this monitoring, the easiest thing to do is to make it transparent. Now, if you are transparent enough, because our center too is a driver of what we call the Transparency and Integrity Index. We have 31 pillars of what we evaluate. And one of the pillars is for every ministry, department, and agency. And right now at the federal level, we have 544. We have 36 states plus FCT 37, and we have 774 local governments. One of the things we'll ask them for out of the 31 pillars is to publish your budget performance every year. Now, budget performance entails the preparation, the execution, how much is left, how you expended it, where are the pictures of what you have built, if you have paid, where is the evidences, and of course, if you check our website, I'll drop the link, it is near less than 5% of MDs are complying with this, less than 5%. Now, I'm talking about the federal level, not to speak of the state government and the local government, you're virtually getting nothing, is near zero. So these are the issues. The second pillar under public sector management is taxes. Taxes has shown as a mechanism for doing so many things. Taxes is usually, people look at it as a form of revenue generation for government. But there's another angle. If you can use taxes to actually combat corruption, in the sense that when people see that is their money, you know you're paying your taxes, and everybody knows how much he pays, I can tell you it will drive the willpower in people to want to know what they are spending their money on. So right now, where nobody cares, people don't pay taxes, you just hear 1 billion has gone there, 2 billion has gone there, 3 billion has gone there. You find that people really do not care. Why? It's not their money. And the cause of this problem is the structure of the nation. I'm of the view to totally decentralize the nation, in the sense that state governments will have, let's say, 50% of revenue. Local governments, though their structures are very weak, strengthen them, let them have 30%. Federal government, let them have 20%. I've just reversed it now. Now, when you do that, you add the lacuna, you add the policy, sorry, that whatever you generate at the state level, keep it. Keep whatever you generate, whatever money you get. If you generate $1 billion per week, keep it. Just pay taxes or royalties to the center, which is the federal government. Now, states will be forced to innovate. And the first fiscal tool of innovation is taxes. They'll start taxing citizens. And because you're applying those taxes, you find out that citizens will now be more interested in what their money is being used for. So they will not allow anybody to just take their money and go and add more wives and buy more cars. It's not going to happen because it's our taxes you are using. And it will breed transparency. For example, maybe in the next class, I'll show you a slide where in the UK, if they take your £100, for those of you that have lived there, you see for every £100 you pay, they will actually send you a bar chart showing £40 was used in the healthcare, £10 was used in the education, breakdown to the last pound of how your money was spent. Why? Their taxes are high. And that is why, for example, in the US tax crimes, sometimes the penalties for tax evasion, you can find out, is even sometimes much harsher than drugs, because they don't joke with their taxes. You can't just, it's a collective will of the people that you are toying with. So these are how taxes play a role. It's a tool for revenue generation, but it's a tool also for good governance in terms of it will increase transparency, it will reduce corruption, and it will increase social inclusion. Everybody will be involved in whatever is happening. The third pillar for good governance is a competitive private sector. We're 200 million in Nigeria. Government cannot employ everybody. But the main pillars, if you want to have security in your country, you must have economic security, education security, and health security. You must have those three. You are healthy, you are educated, and you don't have fear around you, you will compete very well. So government is just an enabler. the federal government and the state government should just be an enabler to allow for competition within the private sector where things will come up. So this is one of the good things about, let's say, the recent fuel subsidy removal. Once they have removed their hands, though they removed it because they could not manage the corruption there, and just the corruption there is not something a whole class can even take. Now, because they couldn't manage the corruption, that's why they are removing it. It's not really based on any good governance issue, but it's a good thing. Let's agree, it's a good thing. It has gone. So we are not going to be hearing 6 trillion has disappeared. I just saw a tweet, I've not verified it, that now somehow we have dropped our consumption from 69 million liters per day that NNPC kept increasing every week. We have not dropped to about 13-20 million per day. And that's a true reflection of reality, meaning the 40 million has all been siphoned. And to move 40 million liters, we are talking about nothing less than 500 trucks, 33,000 liter trucks per day. If you know what a truck looks like, crossing our border. So when they are telling us that you have the customs, the immigration, the police, and all of them cannot see 500 trucks crossing our border, then you know you have a problem. So basically, you need to have a competitive private sector, because the private sector that would innovate and produce the necessary goods and services for people to have good employment. Then the last one is, I think, what we're doing now: civil society, Electoral College, Center for Fiscal Transparency. We have a role to play in governance monitoring, not only looking at who has stolen this or who has stolen that, but ensure that what people said they would do, they will do. I was a bit impressed with President Tinubu last week at a dinner I saw it on the news, where he said, "I look for this job, do not spare me." That statement kind of inspired me, in the sense that, good, this man knows that we will not spare him, because those of us in civil society, we're here, we're meant to be disruptive, to look at problems. We are not going to commend efforts. We're looking for results. So we're going to be asking and demanding for results. We don't care about what effort you have made. So, and he now has not given us a blank check. So I'm telling other people that are in the media here that the president has given us a blank check to scrutinize his government and monitor them. But my own addition to this is, we are too centralized in Abuja. Our state governors are equally we need to monitor the state governments and the local governments. We have forgotten that place, and most of the problems are there. There is low participation of civil society, both of the Electoral College, the Center for Fiscal, everybody, even the media. We like the Abuja news, we don't go down to the grassroots and get the news. And that is where most of the population reside. So these are just the pillars, broad range pillars, dimensions of what governance should entail. There are other pockets later of here and there. We can talk about geoeconomics, how you relate with your neighbors is part of good governance, your international relations, your security policy, your foreign policy. All these are pillars. They are all dependent on these things. But basically, for the purpose of this class, these dimensions are sufficient that if we do them properly and look at them critically and apply them, Nigeria will not be in the problems that we have today. So the next slide is on corruption. Now, everybody knows what corruption is. But in Nigeria, we have different dimensions. Tribalism, nepotism, religious bias, abuse of power, so many things. But since our problem is mostly public sector related, I will stick to the definition of Zeptel, who said corruption is the misuse of public office, public resources, or public responsibility for private, personal, or group gain. I think this summarizes the Nigerian context, because you see, as public servant, we use as simple as, people may not know, if you're a government, if you use your official vehicle to take your your children or your spouse to school is actually abuse of office. Most people will be surprised, because now we have gotten to the level where you will see a minister having a private function and issuing the letters from his office saying the minister of ABC is inviting you to so my son's wedding, where public resources will be used to transport the people for the wedding. Now, I'm not even talking about stealing the money now. So this is how low we have removed the bar, because it's like there's no bar anymore when it comes to some areas of shamelessness in this country, where you see how public servants have turned their the public office into personal use. And people around them, driven by tribal and religious sentiments, actually support them, because the moment he finishes, after what he has done, the next thing you give him a new wife and a new chieftaincy title. So the cycle continues. So the abuse is too much, especially and it's at all levels. And I think at the state level, it's just much worse. So that is what corruption has done. If you now look at, if you look at when I was explaining these dimensions of good governance, I was explaining how corruption has permeated each of these pillars. When it comes to credible elections, why don't we have credible elections? Civil servants. Now look at how many former governors are senators. How many former governors hold the political structure in their states? Back to transparency in party financing, how many of them can say is their salary as either governor or as minister or as GG is what you was sufficient enough for you to spend 2, 3, 4 billion on your primaries down to your general election? How many have declared their assets? And if they have declared, why isn't it in the public domain? Why are you scared? If you have this, clearly declare it. Though now some even do anticipated declaration. There's somebody now that say he has over 1 trillion naira assets. Declare them, so that by the time they steal in the next 4 years, they have already projected how much they are going to be worth in the next 4 years. So they tell you they have 1 trillion now. Tell us what business you do. You are not Dangote or what business you do that you have 1 trillion. And all your life, all you have been is a public servant, but you have 1 trillion in assets. And you did not inherit it from anybody. So this is how you find that corruption has permeated this political accountability. Of course, public sector management and all this public sector corruption, you need the private sector to work together. This is where money laundering comes in, when they work together and you find that it doesn't work. And this sector too is corrupted in the sense that we decide to all keep quiet or just do what suits us. We do the easier things. The easier things is just to make a little noise in the newspaper and we retreat back to our shelves. That is easy to do for everybody to do. But the actual thing of asking the right questions right from your local government to your state level to the federal, most people have abandoned that. So that is just what corruption has done to this whole dimensions of good governance. So what the impact of corruption on governance? Of course, the first point is it erodes the trust we have in the public sector to act in our best interest. The president just removed the fuel subsidy now, but you can see the skepticism. People are not confident that even if you remove it, what is going to happen? How is my life going to improve? They have been so obsessed about removal of fuel subsidy since 2012. Remove. Okay, now all the price increase, all the incomes you have generated, all the money that has come to the state government, to the federal government, what can you show to have used it for? This is what citizens are asking for. So there's really low trust in government when they say they're acting in our interest. That is why there's resistance. So I really wish the next government well that they will show a change from the past, because President Buhari has increased fuel price how many times? Before him, President Goodluck Jonathan did the same. Okay, Yar'Adua reduced, before then Obasanjo. Where is the quality of, where are the services, the goods and services from those increases of fuel price? It's hard to tell. The only time Nigeria documented physical progress was when General Abacha, as head of state, increased fuel price and created the PTF. Now that was visible. But since then, after PTF to date, Nobody can tell you, especially since 1999 to date, where the resources from increase in fuel price has translated to governance. It has translated to more rich people, to politicians having more money, buying more things, yes. But for the general good, best interest of everybody, I don't have that evidence, and I wish somebody would show me that evidence. And of course, it hinders economic growth and development because the best were operating, for example, federal character. Well, for me, the principle is nice, but it has defeated the whole essence. You cannot have your best 11 not in your critical spaces. It's not everything is politics, but not everything should be political. There's no how you can take some critical positions. Now, we're talking about NSA, you start bringing politics. You bring the Nigerian Post Authority, no, that one contributed to our party. You want to do, we're joking with our port sector. You do not see things like your ports industry, MPA, NIMASA, your customs, all those pillars of things that facilitate trade and development. You are thinking of political considerations. You are not going to grow. Definitely not talk about how we're recording $50 billion per year. Africa is recording 50 billion illicit financial flows. One of the sad things about corruption in Africa is that when money is taken, it's not invested in the country or on the continent, it's taken outside. So that is one of the major determinants of why Nigeria is struggling to grow, because I can imagine not promoting it. All the money that has been taken through public sector corruption was invested in Nigeria, even if it's in the power industry or the transport industry or in the schools, we will not be where we are. There are countries in this world that are built on illicit money, and their economies are fostering. The economies are very vibrant. Every holiday we like to run to those countries to enjoy, because one would take money here from the public purse, we go there and buy property, buy things, invest there. But instead of here, we don't do it. So obviously Nigeria or Africa, because this is an African problem, it will hinder economic growth and development. The third pillar, because the impact of corruption on governance, I'm tailoring it to the Nigerian context. We can have more than 20 or 30, but these are what we're challenged with now. The whole insecurity, when you have corruption so bad, you don't provide enough jobs for your citizens. You don't have enough food for your citizens. The next thing, whether you like it or not, your insecurity level is going to rise. Because as they say, the Jamaicans say, man must work, man has to feed, man has to survive. So there is no way money meant for schools to educate people that they will help themselves, money meant for them to be healthy so that they have the energy to work. You will now go and use it to be flying your wives around in private jet, and you think your state will be secure. It's not going to happen. I would like to, for once now, let me use an example of Zamfara State. Go and look at Zamfara State, the kind of governors they have been having since 1999. And how after every government, every time there are dozens of cases, EFCC, ICPC, that is why how they birth the insecurity problem there. You can't leave so many people in poverty, think you can just have so many houses in Nigeria and abroad, and the next thing you think there will be peace. There will not be peace. And most of our insecurity issues, not all, some are driven by greed and other things, because those that have jobs to do, but they will just not do it because the insecurity pays better. But a large percentage of our insecurity is an economic argument. It's lack of economic opportunities that leads to the insecurity, which automatically, of course, goes to the next pillar. It reduces the quality of life of people. And most of the time now, if you are sick in Nigeria, if you cannot afford to go abroad, I'm sorry, just forget it. Any major illness now, almost everybody that can afford it, you hear India, Cairo, everywhere, medical tourism. Why? We are not going to invest in our own healthcare system. So definitely the quality of life would decrease if you cannot even solve minor surgeries. If you do it in Nigeria, most of the time, you find out that the people die. It's fatal. Simple things they do abroad easily and not at any cost. But here we don't even have the good hospitals. Then to even support the private ones, You are not, government is not even supporting the private ones by the environment. Then now you even have the Japan syndrome, where you have the good and brilliant ones, because you are not taking care of them. They are leaving the country and doing very well outside the country. Even though there's second-class citizens there, but they are some, in some contexts, they are better off because the government here has not incentivized them to stay. So, and of course, when you have corruption, now what corruption does is that it even brings instability in the macroeconomic indices. The macroeconomic things you have to, there are three pillars. You look at your exchange rate, your interest rate, then your unemployment rate. Now, these three things are what investors look at, minus the unemployment, but your interest rate and your exchange rate. Now, when there's so much corruption that, for example, now the dollar in the parallel market is 750, in the central bank is 461, that's instability. No foreign investor will want to come and invest his capital. He's not sure what will happen tomorrow. And corruption has not allowed us, corruption has dollarized our economy. There is too much Naira because they've been printing through ways and means 22 trillion. And when they get the Naira, it's too heavy, they change to dollars. Everybody is now saving money in dollar. Well, not everybody, those that have access to state resources are saving mostly in dollars because they have low confidence in the Naira and there's too much Naira. Now they will not save those dollars, so it puts pressure on the Naira by devaluing your Naira. Meanwhile, even during COVID, when the whole world was on global lockdown, dollar was not coming down. And there was no transaction, there was no commerce, there was no trade. Why should dollar not come down? So these are the issues. So these are all just a summary 5 points about the effects of corruption. So before people ask questions, okay, what have we been doing about corruption as a country? There are international commitments we have made to under the UNCTAD, United Nations Convention Against Corruption, under the Financial Action Task Force, under the African Union on Combating Corruption, under the UK Anti-Corruption Summit 2016, so many things we have signed and ratified. And those international framework that I just mentioned a few now is what gave birth to the ICPC in 2000, which is supposed to look at public sector corruption, is what gave birth to the EFCC first in 2002, then 2004 to handle economic and financial crimes, is what gave birth to advanced fee fraud. The first one, I think, was 1995. Now the new one, 2006. Money Laundering Prohibition Act, this has been upgraded to 2022 because to look at areas we call the designated non-financial sector. That means the lawyers, the real estate, or basically money laundering prohibition. Then we have the NATI Act. This has to do with extractive industry, our oil, our gold, and other pieces of precious stones, or regulation. We have the Freedom of Information Act since 2011. We're shouting, give us FOI, give us FOI. If you now go and check the data of how many FOI requests have been asked and how many have been responded to, in fact, it's very demoralizing. Nigerians are so disengaged. They are not using the FOI to ask for information and demand it. And the law is there. We have the Fiscal Responsibility Act that has been abused even by government itself, but CSOs have kept quiet. Probably maybe they don't understand what the law says. An example is you do not borrow more than 5% of your GDP. That's just one example. We have borrowed much more than that. So in violation of our own law. Then we have the Penal Codes, Federation of Nigeria for the south of Nigeria, for the northern Nigeria, and Criminal Code for the South Nigeria. So these laws are more than enough to combat corruption. Code of conduct, I forgot to mention them, but I already explained what they're supposed to do. They are more than enough to combat corruption. And you have agencies and staff and buildings for all these people to do their work. But your guesses are good and mine. Everybody can form an opinion on whether corruption has been combated or has not been combated, especially in the last 10 years. So, second to the last slide, my recommendations is Good. My recommendations are, one, we have to fix our economics. Our economics where we have, we generate enough money for, it can't be for everybody, but at least for the majority. where at least you can feed, your children can go to school, you have light, water, you have all those economic indicators just to improve your quality of life. And to do that, you must get your governance principles correct. You must get them right. And when I mean governance principles, I'm talking about this. And for you to get all these things correct, fortunately and unfortunately, you must get your politics correct. So that is what the Electoral College, I believe, is doing. If we do not get this politics correct, all these last two will suffer. The second one is there's need for improved citizens' engagement. I don't know. I believe the NOA, National Orientation Agency, is doing very well, but I just don't know. I can't explain why we're so disengaged, in the sense that we do not ask questions and we do not put pressure for the right things to be done. So there needs to be more citizen engagement. Citizens need to be angry. When I mean angry, positive anger of what should be done. And every time we're asking questions, when people beat traffic light, you should talk about it. You should stop where you can. All the little soft issues we think about. Within our own personal spaces, we have to ensure that all these things happen. The third thing, of course, collaboration. Discussing Electoral College, other civil society, CGID, Center for Journalism, Innovation and Development, everybody come together, be having collaboration, knowledge, coordinate, and to enhance cooperation. Because once you cooperate and you're one body, you find that it's difficult, it is easier to achieve your objectives. Then I'll come to this, there's need for establishing anti-corruption units across all sectors of government. Now, it's not just the federal level. The problem is most anti-corruption is checked at the federal level. We have little or nothing at the state level. Of course, the governors control the local government, so there's little or nothing at the subnational level, that's the local governments. So I think we have a whistleblower mechanism, which has not really worked because so many agencies are involved. So there's no harmonized platform where you have a whistleblower mechanism, which goes together with protection mechanism, because you must protect the whistleblower. So when you have these things, then it will encourage people. It's not nice to just blow the whistle and nothing is being done. So these are some of the issues. So then the last thing, this needs to change. We need to promote transparency, because combating corruption seems to be impossible. So why don't we push for transparency? Transparency in the sense that, okay, we assume there's nothing to hide. Whatever government is doing, apart from security issues, we know there's not everything that needs to be in the public domain. Everything government is doing should be in the public domain. Everything. There's internet now, is the internet age we have now. Publish everything. Let citizens make whatever they want to make of it. So I think that's one way, because there's nothing that breeds corruption like secrecy. Anything done in the dark or behind closed doors, that is when corruption will happen. So we need to unveil all the curtains, open all the doors, make everything public, like I said, apart from national security issues. And that is a way that will deepen democracy, because that's what democracy is all about, participation and involvement, and hopefully reduce corruption. So in conclusion, corruption is as old as society itself. We all know, like I said, is well documented. We don't need to overflog the issue, but the solutions are, like I said, just a summary. One, for this good governance, I think if we restructure the country, it will improve the governance. If we can use tax as a tool for improving, for the reduction of corruption, because when people are taxed, they become more aware. We can use that as a tool. Thirdly, we can improve our transparency measures where we advocate that everything government does should be in the public domain. There are so many things we need to do, so many, but in just summary, these are my 3 recommendations for this class. Thank you very much.
All right. Thank you so much, sir. That was such an insightful, thought-provoking lecture. Now we will take questions. I have Silas Agaldo. I would ask you to unmute yourself now so that.
Okay, thank you very much, sir, for a very insightful lecture. Just to add, right? I'm very wary when I think about Nigeria, because if you talk about corruption and you think it's only up there, you are just living in a delusional state. Because just walk out to the gate of your neighbor's house and interact with a security man on the street, you'll be shocked how corrupt his mindset is. But I will say, for me, right, it's not like I've given up on the country, because what we'll be doing right now is just patching wounds. I think the crux of fixing our system is going back to primary and secondary schools to teach people integrity, student integrity, and nationhood in a way that they would take this nation so, how do I put it, so personal, that when they grow up and see things like you could hear children in kindergarten telling their dad, oh, you beat a yellow light, and the dad is arguing with them. So I actually think that's where we need to go back to. And we'll fix this country for the future. Right now, I'm really discouraged because even within our peers, if you talk with each other, you'll be so disappointed. Like, do we even have hope again? And this is so I don't know what measures can we do to go back to the basics of teaching the younger ones, younger generation as they're coming up, that this country can be better and they can do things in a very good way. Thank you, sir.
Okay, thank you very much, Silas. Sorry, Mr. Yakubu, would you want to respond to that, or would you wait till we have more questions? Do we have more questions? Please kindly indicate by raising up your hands, or you can put it in the chat box. Okay, I guess the class was really, really good, straight to the point. So we don't have questions, comments, contributions, just like Silas did. Yes, it indeed was. It was an amazing lecture. Okay. I have Mark Fred and Cynthia. Okay. Go ahead, Mark Fred. I've asked you to unmute.
Okay. Thank you so much, sir, for this insightful discourse. It was very, very insightful. But my question is, I want to bring it down, as the last speaker also said. I want to bring it down to us, down to our society, down to our community, down to us young people. How can we be advocates and not just being advocates? How can we start practicalizing this issue of curbing corruption, like in our space, those in education, in media, in business, in entrepreneur and the rest? Because I believe that we have been able to hear all these policies for so many years now, and yet the corruption is still growing. So how can we start up on our own end, on our own space, as young people, to make sure that we stop this issue of the corruption being evident, like in our society? Thank you, sir.
Okay, I'll take the last question and then Mr. Yakubu can respond. Cynthia, please go ahead.
Good evening. Thank you for the lecture. I like that it was very practical with actual data. And I see that you have actually worked in government. And my question is, how does the government, and I would use wherever you have worked as an example, received the fight against corruption? Because we all know, like you said, you started the course. You mentioned that everyone understands what the issues of Nigeria is and why we need to fight corruption. So if they know this, how has the reception of this fight been? I feel like it's the fight against anti-corruption itself is almost diabolical. Diabolical in a way that even when the people that you are fighting corruption to help understand the gains of this fight, they fight against you. And I think that's what keeps citizens jaded. And that's what makes us resist tax payment, you know, just like children as well. That's what makes what I'll call the citizens a bit more reluctant to keep laws and stay on the right path. Because you have, of course, some people who have more integrity than others who would really keep laws whether or whether, but you have those that like, our government doesn't do much, so why do I have to bother? You know, please, if you can just throw more light, just to inspire and encourage people that want to try and fight this fight as well in government. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Cynthia, right? I got a question from Cynthia. Yeah, I worked in government. I worked in the EFCC. I resigned in 2017 to start this center and other things that I do. So yes, you see, fighting corruption, for me, I believe it all boils down to individual responsibility and how much you value your own dignity. Yes, everybody can be bribed, everybody, but bribery does not mean in terms of money alone. I've seen desperate people go to the level of dragging people's parents, dragging people's pastors, religious leaders, traditional rulers for their own self-interest. I've seen, if you read Ngozi Okonjo-Iweala's book, where they even had to kidnap her mother for her to approve the subsidy payment. That was in 2012, if I'm correct. So my thoughts on fighting corruption, honestly, for me is philosophical, from the individual level, where you just don't value anything that was not gotten through legal means. Don't value it. Don't value people, not abuse them in that sense, but don't value people that is evident how they made their money is through corrupt means. Let's not idolize them, because idolization is affirmation. Somebody you know was only a permanent secretary or only a minister. The next thing he has X, Y, and Z. And you see him and you really praise him. You have boosted his ego to affirm that what he has done is correct. So if everybody, there are things, and if you look at some societies, we have reached, my major worry is we have reached the level of shamelessness. Shamelessness in the sense that before, when you steal, you don't even want anybody to know. Now you steal, you even put it on social media. For God's sake, how shameless can a government be? Now I'm forced to use an example where you promise Nigerians to have a national carrier, and after 8 solid years, you go and paint an aeroplane, bring it to the airport for Nigerians to see, to say you have a national carrier. Think deep about it. How shameless can you be to even if nobody was going to ask you? So these are the issues, and there are dozens of examples. And I think these people are enabled by us, you and I, that see them in society and promote them. Now, I'm not calling for abuse or anything, but by the time everybody shows he does not want to be associated with what is bad, you care about your integrity, the name of your family, or your religion, or whatever. That is attitudinal change, and it needs to change. It's just too much. They were everybody, if you look at the fuel subsidy scam, for example, now, have you thought about, Cynthia, how 500 trucks can cross the border. At every point border or at the ports, let me use the ports as an example. You have 17 agencies at the ports. MPA, NIMASA, police, this, that, customs, immigration, all 17 would agree that company A brought in X amount of fuel when it is not true. Now, what law are you going to make 17 agencies do the right thing? What law are you going to impute to stop 400 to 500 trucks leaving your borders every day and customs officers cannot see it? What law is not there? So you find that everybody just wants to be involved, and everybody belongs to one religion or the other, or one society or the other, that abhors this kind of conduct. So I think it boils down to everybody. That's the only way I can do it. And I've seen people try to live honest, decent lives and they succeed. I've seen it. So that's the only way I can see it. We have no challenges with our laws. We have no challenges with our institutions. What we have is in the implementation and the individual. That's where we have challenges. And that's why I said, when you use tax as a tool, you'll be more interested. Right now, nobody cares. But when people are taxed as a tool, I'm telling you, if the oil could drain in Nigeria today, corruption will stop. Because for whatever to survive, we need to innovate. If you're innovating, you're not going to allow anybody steal your money. That's just what I can say. The first question, how can the youth curb corruption, is the same response. Be involved. Be involved. But involvement, do not go with the thinking to get your own cut of the cake. Because sometimes we have seen enough civil society, when they come, they're involved, the moment they give them their own share, they keep quiet. So sometimes they're just using it as a tool to have access to state resources. So these are just my response to the last questions, if I get them correctly. Thank you.
Okay, awesome. There's a question in the chat box. Someone said, please, sir, what specific challenges have you faced in your fight against corruption in government? Well, I think he must have touched on this briefly during his responses, but do you want to add something to that, Mr. Yakubu?
There's really no challenge. The only challenge you will face if you are combating corruption is the person wants to compromise you by giving you money. Back to what I said, it depends on you. If you collect money, you are compromised. That's the only way somebody, if you decline not to collect any bribe, if all officers, the 70 agencies I mentioned earlier on now, decide they are not collecting bribe today, fuel will be less than 200 naira in this country. But because government is tired, the new government are tired, they cannot control it, they have removed it. Then suddenly our consumption from 69 million liters has dropped to less than 20 million liters. So you see, it was a tool used to combat it. So the major thing they can do, there are usually two things, either to bribe you or to remove you. Those are the only two things people can do when you resist corruption. So if you refuse to be bribed and you are so independent, nobody can, really, they can't really do anything. So once, and that bribery stems from my own view, is from greed, because sometimes you find out we are looking for not what we need for wants. You see, how does somebody steal 10 billion? In fact, the billions, you can't even comprehend them. You wonder what they want to use it for. So you see, it's not for a need, because you can't eat more than 2 times a day, 3 times a day. How many houses can you do? So our greed too needs to reduce. I don't want to start sounding like I'm preaching, you understand? Because this is the technical class, but we just need to lower our greed. It's an individual thing and everybody has to do it. Thank you.
Okay, we have one more question from Amira.
Good evening, everyone. Good evening, sir. Thank you for the great class. Okay, so we've been talking about corruption from the outside. Talking about how we need to curb our politicians or people from being corrupt. But as an individual, say me, for example, my outside now and trying to navigate myself into the circle, I'm thinking and I don't see a way in that does not involve me compromising my integrity. I don't see a way that I would be able to rise in the ranks, or I would be able
Okay, Amira got lost. Her network must have thrown her out. Okay, we have. All right. But sir, did you get a glimpse of the question she was trying to ask?
She was talking about maybe she needs to get a job and she needs to pay or something like that to compromise her integrity. I think, is that what she was talking about?
I think she was trying to explain the fact that that there's really no way one can actually get in to try and change the system without having to compromise.
Okay, let me use the words of Governor El-Rufai, former Governor El-Rufai, where he said that, look, politics is dirty. And if you remember in one slide, I told you everything starts from the politics. So, and it is dirty. If you say you are going to stay outside and not do anything, the system is not going to change. So it makes more sense or better sense to be involved, even if it means getting your hands dirty. But at the back of your mind, be focused on the objective, that the objective is to improve the system. And I seem to kind of align with him in the sense that if you are coming to totally clean, well, it's not even going to be possible anyway. It's not practical, it's not possible. But when you have a critical mass of people all involved and hoping they will not change, that the objective is for Nigeria, along the line, they get their hands dirty, I think it will be acceptable to everybody. So that is just my own contribution to that. Thank you.
I'm not sure if a lot of people will agree, but well, thank you so much, sir, for that, for your school of thought. I wanted Amira to type her question. She said, but once I compromise my integrity, they have a tool to use against me. Okay, just a follow-up to Mr. Yakubu's response.
Yeah, there's no linear answer to these kind of questions. There's just no way. But we all have to get in, have to be involved, and at some level, definitely, I believe, naturally they'll try to compromise you. So if for the better good, if your own estimation is better, you go with it. If you want to leave, like the corruption is too much, you just leave, it's good as well. So it all depends on the individual. I can't give you any direct answer. I've gotten a training contract. When I saw the amount of training, I said, are you people okay? Why is it, how can I train at such amount? And that's how they do it. I said, I can't do it. If you cannot do it as so amount, I will leave it. I will have it. They canceled my contract and I was okay because the amount was just too much. It wasn't something I could handle. It was too much for me. If you are doing a training, there's a margin. But when you make it times 2, times 3, I say, no, I can't do it. You can get somebody that can do it, but me, I cannot do this thing. I cannot do it. So that it all depends on the individual. Somebody may argue that, okay, let me do it, at least because if I do it, at least I've reduced their own cut because they will go and give somebody else that will do it. It's an argument. I'm not saying that one too is wrong. So it all depends on how you see these things. But I said I would not do it and I did not do it.
Okay. I think this is a lot for us to ponder on and make, the hard choices, personal hard choices, especially having Nigeria in focus. And I hope that we eventually do things that will better our country. Thank you so much, Mr. Yakubu. It has been a beautiful evening. I wish we could continue listening to you and having questions that could, trigger our minds to think deeply on ways we can help better our country in terms of corruption. But thank you, everyone, once again for joining. Please let's put in the chat box. Thank you so much, Mr. Umar Yakubu, for your lecture. I'm hoping that we have you again before this semester runs out, because it has been really insightful. Thank you. And I will hand over to a representative of the college, the Deputy Executive Director, Lisa. If you want to give a special thanks to Mr. Yakubu for coming. Hello, Lisa.
Thank you, Shola. Well done. Thank you so much, sir, on behalf of the college. It's always a pleasure having you. You dispense so much knowledge, and the class has been very, very insightful. Thank you so much for your time and for your knowledge shared. Thank you to all the students that joined. Our class continues tomorrow, same time, 5 p.m. So let's make it a date. And well done, Shola. Well done. So I'll just allow the students to unmute and say thank you before we bring the class to a close.
Thank you very much. I know someone that noted that all the way back from NMS, you've always been a man of integrity. So I can believe your story of refusing that offer. We are really inspired.
Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you.
We appreciate you, and we celebrate you. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. For
Mr. Yakubu, I wanted to ask, please, do you know a colleague of mine? His name is Ehi Esoimeme. He's also involved in anti-money laundering. So I just wanted to ask if you know him in person.
Is he in the center?
Hello, sir. Do you know him?
Oh, sorry, I didn't mute. Okay, yeah, of course I know Ehi. He's more into AML, CFT, anti-money laundering, combating financial terrorism.
Yes, when I read your profile, he came to mind. He was a colleague in school.
Okay, yeah, I know him. Well,
All right.
I know him.
Okay, good.
Yeah, he's doing very well in what he does. AML,
Yes.
CFT. That's anti-money laundering.
Laundering, yes.
Yeah.
Okay, great work, sir. Thank you once again.
Thank you too.
Thank you, sir. For those who might want to reach out to you after the class or know more about what you do, could we have your handles?
Okay. Can I type it in the chat?
Yes, please. Please go ahead, sir.
That's for Twitter. That's for Twitter. For email, and give personal email. Uyabolaho. Whoever, of course, I know the idiot. Don't mind, he's my friend. In fact, Uyi. He's from Air Force Military School. Uyi is my friend. Wow, surprising. Say hello to him. Let me call it. All right, thank you.
All right, thank you so much, sir.
Yeah.
Shola, you can end the meeting. I think you have the host function. Good evening, everyone.
All right, then. Good night, everyone. See you tomorrow.